Be great. Okay, hello everybody. My name is John Harris. I'm the co-chair of Climate Action Brookline. And this meeting today, we're going to be talking about trees and forests in Brookline. And think of this as kind of a working meeting, kind of a brainstorming meeting. We won't cover everything under this topic, of course, but hopefully we'll get some good kind of action ideas, I guess I would say, for those of us concerned about the subject to be thinking about. In addition to being co-chair of Climate Action Brookline, I am a town meeting member in Precinct 8 in North Brookline, and constituents have been contacting me in that role, very concerned about developers as part of their prep of lots for expanding buildings, renovating buildings, whatever, are cutting down trees. And in many cases, it seems cutting down trees that probably really don't need to be cut down for that particular construction project. So, and as we know, trees, especially mature trees, like the many legacy trees that we so much enjoy in Brookline, play a major role in sequestering carbon and ameliorating the urban heat island effect. But recently, well, as I say, many of us are concerned that many of the older trees are reaching the end of their very long natural lifespan. And then on the other hand, and at the same time, that developers are cutting down way too many trees that still have years of life in them. What can we do about that? We have several speakers today who are going to talk about various aspects of this. Let's see, I'm a little bit disorganized in my notes here. So in addition to the sequestering carbon and ameliorating the urban heat island effect, trees are beneficial to our own mental health in terms of forest bathing. And I always feel much better after hanging around in a forest for a bit. I guess probably because we have a whole bunch of speakers, I'm going to say this very quickly for a little bit of context. I grew up in a forest suburb in central Connecticut. My house was completely surrounded by trees. As I was growing up, as each lot would go under contract to build a house, the trees on that lot would be very carefully cut down, usually making efforts to save as many as possible. So even when we had houses everywhere, I got a couple folks joining. Bob Miller, good, okay. Even as you know, the neighborhood kind of grew in human beings, we still had trees everywhere. So it can be done. It can be done in that way. My parents told me that there were deer crossing through our front yard when I was very little. I don't remember that, but I definitely remember all we kids and also all of our dogs and all that kind of running around completely freely in the wild, kind of, and it was a fantastic way to grow up. So how close can we get to that in Brookline? We will talk a little bit about that today, and hopefully we'll end up with some kind of next steps, kind of action steps toward the end of this meeting. Our first speaker is Rebecca Arnaldi, who lives in North Brookline. I was really, it was fantastic to see when Rebecca invited us to take a look in her backyard. And there is in fact a little kind of mini meadow and mini forest back there. Rebecca, I wonder if you could just tell us what you have growing in the very pretty densely settled part of North Brookline.
Sure. So I won't start with a list of everything I've got growing, but I will say that I have taken photographs of now 230 different species of organisms in my backyard. So I have a great concern. First of all, it's just great to see everybody. It's good to see these faces on the screen, people that care about what's going on. I really care a lot. I have kind of discovered through what's going on right by me and doing research that backyards are kind of starting to disappear in Brookline. And I think they are vitally important in terms of climate change. So I grew up actually in the house I live in Brookline. I'm not there right now. I'll just give that caveat, but generally speaking, I am there. And I actually spent a lot of time in my backyard. As a kid, I just watched the squirrels. I hung out in my backyard all the time. And then I became a naturalist. I went away to graduate school, became a naturalist. And when I came back as an idealistic young naturalist, I convinced my parents to let the back of the backyard become a forest. So it wasn't that I planted trees, they planted themselves. And that's something I want to make a point about, that they will plant themselves. And we can actually let forests grow by choosing what we take away instead of choosing what we put down. And that's kind of what I did. So we had Norway maples, and I know a lot of people don't feel good about Norway maples. I honestly feel good about all trees, but I did take away a lot of the Norway maple saplings and let a lot of the black cherry that were planted by birds and some hickory that were planted by probably squirrels grow along with different kinds of oaks. So I developed this really cool little micro forest in the back of my backyard. This doesn't look like a landscape backyard, and to some people's sensibilities, it's like, what are you doing here? But for me, it's great because I see so many different birds, and now also herbaceous plants, all different kinds of herbaceous plants growing there, all different kinds of pollinators. I'll show you a couple of pictures if we're able to do a screen share.
You can do that, Rebecca. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not, let's see if I can do it. Okay, I'm gonna try this out. I'm not very tech savvy, so please excuse me if it doesn't work well. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this.
Yep. I think it is sharing. You just have to tell it, this is probably not the screen you want.
No, it's not the screen I want.
Go to the right window.
You know, I don't want to take too much time with this, so I'm thinking I might skip the share.
I'm sure your slides are fantastic, though.
Yeah, I don't want to waste your time. So I'm just going to talk. And I wish I was in my backyard so I could show you the trees and show you the birds. I took a picture this year of a northern parula, which is a bird that's considered to be in threatened status in Massachusetts in terms of breeding and such, and in my backyard. So I go to Halls Pond Sanctuary and I see these birds, and then I come in my backyard and see like the same birds. So when the pandemic started, I had actually just spent this whole year painting. I'm an artist also, painting the wildlife in my backyard and the trees in my backyard to show at Town Hall in Brookline. And my paintings are still up there. And then the pandemic hit. I lost a lot of my work, and I started just spending all my time in my backyard with my dog and cataloging everything that was there, photographing and cataloging everything. I kind of started with some of the trees, the herbaceous plants, then got into insects. I learned all kinds of things about insects. I took entomology, a field class in entomology taught by insects. I really did, and I still am taking that class. And so I got really into the backyard even more deeply than I had been, which was already pretty deep. And then what happened? Well, a developer bought the house next door. And there is now the plan to make a house twice as big for the same number of units, just 2 units, it's 2 units now, and take up most of their backyard. Now, when I watch my backyard, I'm also seeing their backyard because they have a large backyard also. And there's a big white pine. And I've heard screech owls in it. I've seen hawks in it. Lots of birds nest in it. There's a hemlock, which is pretty cool to have in a backyard. There's a pin oak, there's a maple. So I'm watching all these trees and all this wildlife, and I now have this really great concern for what's going to happen. One thing I want to say that hasn't been brought up yet in John's wonderful introduction is the roots of trees. Because right now, not only are backyards not protected in Brookline, and the trees are very minimally protected. It's just a matter of if you have, large trees and you cut down a certain amount, then you have to make sure you're absorbing water. But the roots are really not protected. So my trees, all these trees are right on the edge of my property, right next to theirs, and their roots are just where they want to excavate. And now they're saying that some of those trees are their trees, and we've been living there for 50 years, have to figure out where the property line is. If they were right, then, so anyway, I'm basically just here to share, backyards are so vitally important. And if you have a backyard, you can really do a lot with it just by letting parts of it go wild. I get to see ovenbirds. I get to see all kinds of warblers. I get to see amazing pollinators. If I was more tech savvy, I'd show you a lot of these photographs. I'm working on a book on my backyard. If anyone's interested in that, you can feel free to reach out to me, because I'm hoping to share a lot of what I've been seeing in my backyard. I also can possibly arrange for visits if people want to see. And if anybody wants to help me protect what's in my backyard and the house next door, feel free to reach out about that too, because there'll be more planning board meetings and zoning board meetings. But I'm really happy to see that this group is here to try to meet and see what we can do to protect the trees. I spoke with another developer who cut down some trees, and I was talking to him about it, like, oh, so why did you cut those trees down? And he said, I'm gonna put them back. Now, this was an interesting, obviously he can't put those trees back, but he meant he's gonna plant others. And as John mentioned, and probably a lot of you know, large trees sequester more carbon. I heard a scientist speak about it, and where an average tree might sequester 50 pounds a year, a large tree sequesters a lot more. And trees can live for, depending on the species, 400, 700 years. Trees that are hollow can live hundreds of years longer. So we really have to do what we can to protect the trees and their roots, which go out 2 to 3 times what their canopy is. So we have to be careful not to compact those roots. We have to figure out ways of protecting the root systems. So I hope that, yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to say something to you all. I hope that we get to connect in other ways, and I'm looking forward to hearing the other speakers. I'm happy to speak with people, answer any questions or comments, whatever.
And what we're going to do is go for Q&A kind of after all our speakers have spoken, just to be sure everybody gets enough time. But there are 2 very practical questions, Rebecca, that I think would help everybody. One is, anything you want to say in terms of identifying exactly where you, or as much as you feel comfortable, where you are in North Brookline, even just the street alone would help people give some context. That's question 1. Question 2, which is part of that, is how big is your backyard behind your house?
Okay, so I live on Naples Road, I will tell you, and the house next door that is supposed to be developed is 85 Naples. So if you want to go on the planning board, check out when their next meeting is, you are able to do that. And how big my backyard is, I'm really bad with square footage type things.
Well, is it equal to the size of the house on the lot, or is it half that size in back, or that would give some idea?
Yeah, I would say it might be about equal size to the house, something around that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a large lot, and when you think in lot size, people think, okay, let's double that, and that's what they want to do. The same developer asked to buy my house, as well. So that's what they're trying to do.
Yep. Okay. Let me get back to my notes here. Our next speaker. Where are my notes? Here they come. Good. Our next speaker is going to talk about how to try to grow forests just like Rebecca's, hopefully in Brookline, something called a Miyawaki forest. And our speaker to tell us about that is landscape architect historian Gina Crandall of North Brookline. So Gina, if you could tell us about a Miyawaki forest.
And John, it's Olivia here. I'm gonna share my screen. Gina has some slides and I'm gonna advance them for her.
Yep, perfect. Perfect.
Okay, and I just want to say that Gina came and spoke to our tree group at Mothers Out Front, and we were so inspired by this, and we're hoping to perhaps take this on, and would love, love, love everybody's feedback. So Gina, on to you.
Okay, thanks, Olivia. I hadn't heard of Miyawaki forests until just a few months ago. And when I got interested, I found out more about them, and then I contacted Olivia, who leads the tree team at Mothers Out Front Brookline. Next. The first thing Olivia and I did together was to go to Danahy Park in Cambridge to see the first Miyawaki forest that was planted in New England just last September. It starts out as a small garden, really. It's the light green circular area planted in full sun on the hillside. But instead of being, say, a perennial garden, it has a big future. It's planted with very small trees and shrubs that will grow 3 feet taller each year. And after 3 years, it will be twice as tall as we are and self-sustaining. Next. The first Miyawaki forest was planted in Japan in 1976. And since then, thousands of them have been planted around the globe. Miyawaki recommends planting seedlings of native species. Most nurseries, though, don't have seedlings or many native plants, but the Native Plant Trust of Massachusetts does. We're working with a horticulturist at Garden in the Woods who has shared a list of available native plants with us. If you look at this picture that's a little bit of a close-up of the Danahy forest, you might be able to recognize an oak or a maple in the photo. These trees and shrubs are all about 2 feet tall and densely planted. There are 1,400 of them. It will change dramatically over time. Imagine oaks and hickories 100 feet tall. They will become the canopy of a forest above layers of understory trees and shrubs. And one of the most attractive aspects of a mini forest is that the site can be very small as 100 square feet with just 33 plants. Next. In natural succession, drawn on the left, a temperate forest could take 100 years to become a stable climax forest. Mini forests can become a climax forest 10 times faster by skipping a few steps. First, the soil is prepared, decompacted and amended with nutrients, just as we would any garden. And second, the trees in the plant list are those that will become climax species in our area. And that skips over some of the annuals, perennials, and mid-succession species like pines that would be normally part of natural succession. So the mini forest is really a compressed natural succession. Next. Mini forests have many environmental benefits, certainly compared to lawns, and even to the English lawn and tree style of our parks. Mini forests are 20 times more biodiverse than a conventional forest, which means that layers of plants create habitat for everything from microbes to mammals. They're 30 times more dense and store 40 times more carbon than a tree plantation. Every living thing is made of carbon that was once in the atmosphere. So the more growth, the more carbon that's sequestered. Dense layered forests are the most carbon-rich ecosystems. Planting many less expensive small trees is a way for a way to support the urban forest climate resiliency master plan and the town's goal of planting 900 trees per year. And not least of all, it will maintain itself in 3 years. Next. I have lots of resources if you want to know more about these mini forests. I have books, videos, TED Talks, and a flyer that you can share with your friends. Here's Miyawaki's book on the left. And I just finished Suzanne Simard's book in the center. She's proven, she's done the research to challenge Darwin's emphasis on competition. She's proven that trees communicate and collaborate through fungal networks, which is the real key to native plants. And on the right, a book using the Miyawaki method to rewild the world. The Mini Forest Revolution is written by Hannah Lewis. She was working on a mini forest in France when she wrote it, but she now works for Biodiversity for a Livable Climate here in Cambridge. And Olivia and I met together with another person from Bio for Climate, for Livable Climate, and we're making a connection there. We'll put our emails in the chat, so if you want us to send you some links to some of these resources, you can just let us know. Next.
Oops. Sorry.
It's okay.
I thought we were done. There's one last slide.
So the first step in the process is spreading the word about mini forests and collaborating with everyone who's interested. Next is site selection. We're looking for a small public or private site, full sun, without trees, with access to water during at least the first 3 years. Could be new development, old parks, housing, and town properties, you name it. By the way, Somerville, Natick, Everett, Boston, Dorchester, and East Boston are all considering mini forests now. So when a site is found, we will develop a planting plan, begin fundraising, and engage volunteers for a big planting day event. You can see a planting day event in Belgium in the photo on the left, and what it looked like less than 4 years later. We're really excited about this idea. We haven't approached the town yet, but the town's goal of planting 900 trees a year is a tall order, and a mini forest could really help the town. And the town could really help us with this project. So right now, or after the presentations, we'd like to hear what you think about the idea, whether you support it, and any questions you have. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What a great idea. And our next speaker is Len Woley, who is a bicycle advocate and a member of the Transportation Board, and has over the last several years been an instigator of very intriguing projects, such as the one that of the question that you saw a second ago in front of your screen. What would you do with 120 acres of open space in Brookline? And so Len, if you could go ahead and tell us all about it.
Let me unmute. Thanks for the intro, John.
Yep. There you
Gina,
go.
I have a few ideas for perhaps where this mini forest could go.
Oh, good.
I want to start with the picture here. On the upper right corner is the town indoor pool. Prior to COVID, there were about 80,000 visitors a year. The picture in the upper middle is of Waldstein Park on a May morning. There's over 200 people there. In the upper left is the tennis courts at the Amory Park. And then the picture on the bottom is of the town municipal golf course. And if you look closely, you can see about 6 people in that area. This map here is from 1855, and I included it to give an idea of what it may have looked like back in that time for where the golf course is currently. It was wetlands, so there was marsh. There's a good amount of tree cover, and the land was initially purchased for playground purposes. In 1911, I found in the local news that there was a reference to a bridle path that ran through the Putterham Meadows. And in 1927, the Brookline Bird Club and Troop 4 of the Brookline Boy Scouts put up bird houses and feeding shelves on the land. And people observed over 25 different bird species, including black ducks, bobwhites, ruffed grouse, and many others. In 1927, the town gets serious about adding a golf course, and the president of the Brookline Birding Club writes a letter opposing the construction of a golf course at the site. At this point, we're entering an era of golf. There's the country club, there's the Chestnut Hill Golf Club, which was close to the Heath School. There's the Weld Golf Club, which was where what is now the Hancock Village, and then soon would be the Brookline Municipal Golf Course. And it was also an era of mini golf. Pictured here is Ernest Fossa. He won the state championship in 1930. He's from Brookline. And there are many miniature golf courses popping up around town. This is a picture of Lotta Schick. She was a town meeting member, school committee member. And she was the original proponent of the town municipal golf course. She, along with Philip Bowker, gathered over 3,500 signatures in support of a golf course. She was not present for the initial opening, but when the course was open to the public, she drove the first ball and played 9 holes of golf. In 1964, about 10 years after Lotta Schick's death, Ray Foreman fought for equal treatment at Putterham Meadows Golf Course. The Park and Rec Commission at that time had voted to disallow women from playing on the golf course during certain weekend mornings and holiday mornings because allegedly the women played like children, they were dangerous, and they were slow. So Mrs. Ray Foreman of 85 Westbourne Terrace fought this along with 149 other women. They sued the town of Brookline, lost their initial case, and appealed that decision. And roughly a year later, the town relented. The Park and Rec Commission voted to allow women equal opportunity for playing time at the golf course. But this sort of practice continued at private courses well after this. In 1988, the U.S. Open was held at the Country Club and agreed to pay Brookline $140,000 to use the course as a parking lot. In the 1990s, efforts to take a portion of Putterham Woods for a driving range were resisted by advocates led by the Brookline Green Space Alliance. 1999, there was another golf tournament. Course was used as a parking lot again. And then in 2004, Recreation Director Robert Lynch set a marketing budget of $22,000 to increase awareness about the golf course. He said, "I've had a lot of people say that they didn't even know there's a public golf course in Brookline." And then in 2008, the golf course is named after Mr. Lynch. In 2016, a driving range is added. The picture on the left is an aerial view of the area, and then on the right, another aerial view picture showing the new driving range. In 2022, the US Open is held at the Country Club. Again, the Lynch Golf Course serves as an entry point to the event and is paid $150,000 for use as a parking lot, just $10,000 more than what was paid in 1988. The event was a great success, thanks in part to the tireless efforts of Brookline town staff. One town staff member told me that he devoted 120 hours to this event over the course of 9 days. Also in 2022, the Golf Course Landscape Master Plan Design Review Committee is currently in the preliminary phases of creating a site-wide plan to improve the functionality of the course and also to increase community use. In 2020, the town updated its Parks and Open Space Recreation Master Plan. part of that plan was to have a survey sent out to the town, a random sampling of Brookline residents. They were asked in part to rate the importance of current offerings. Parks and playgrounds were ranked number 1, trails and pathways were ranked number 2, nature sanctuaries were ranked number 3, and ranked number 21st was the municipal 18-hole golf course. In June of 2021, Brookline updated its urban forest climate resiliency master plan. And this is some of the details that Gina mentioned earlier about the goals of what we want for tree cover in Brookline. And then it also noted that several town properties showed a loss of canopy, and in particular, it notes the Putterham Meadows Golf Course, where trees were cleared for adding the driving range. Here's a figure from that report. The lighter shade of green shows lower existing canopy. Darker shades of green show greater existing canopy. And if you can sort of eyeball where the golf course is, there's a few patches of dark green where you have the Putterham Woods, and then also along the border with the country club, but then also some patches where there's not much tree canopy. And then this figure here shows possible tree canopy. Lighter hexagons show that there's not much potential for planting trees without significant change. That's due to housing or streets or parking lots. But again, if you look in the area where the golf courses are, there is significant potential for more tree planting. So what types of trees do well in wet soil and flooding conditions? The Brookline Municipal Golf Course is prone to flooding. We could look to Griggs Park, which is also a former wetland, has some beautiful weeping willow trees. One picture of that is shown on the right. And then some other trees to consider. I learned from Gina that red maples could work well. A picture of those is shown at the bottom. This slide shows a little bit about usage of the golf course. In 2021, less than 4% of Brookline residents golfed at the municipal golf course. The municipal golf course is 22% of Brookline's 557 acres of open space. That area is shown with a blue wedge, the 120 acres. The non-golf course acreage, 437 acres, is shown with the red wedge of the pie. And then the little figures there represents the golfers, the Brookline residents that golfed in 2021. It was 2,556 Brookline residents. So each one of those figures represents 511 people. And then the regular stick figure is Brookline residents that did not golf. So that was around 60,000 people. And each one of those figures is 501 people. So this is an idea. The idea behind this slide is to give a perspective of who's using what land and what percentage of the land is devoted to those people. And then another fun comparison is comparing our golf course to the Arnold Arboretum. The Arnold Arboretum, at least twice as large as the golf course at 281 acres. So if we look at the number of rounds at the golf course in 2021, there was over 31,000 rounds played. Each one of the golfers represents about 10,000 rounds. And then in 2020, the Arnold Arboretum had 2 to 3 million visitors for the year. So each one of the stick figures represents 10,000 visits. That's the end of my talk. I had many more slides, but wanted to keep it within some time limit. So I conclude with asking the question, what would you like to do with 120 acres of open space in Brookline? Here's a QR code for a 1-minute survey, or if you'd like, you can send me an email and I can send you a link.
Fantastic. Wow. Wow. All right. Thank you very much, Hugh. Len. Our next speaker is Hugh Madison. Hugh Madison has been working on trees in Brookline for at least as long as the 30 years that I've been here in town. He's a longtime member, and Hugh, I'm guessing maybe even a founder of the Brookline Green Space Alliance. And he is also a central member, perhaps the chair, I think, of the Town of Brookline Tree Planting Committee.
That's true.
And Hugh also gives tours of different parks, etc., in town all the time. So Hugh, if you could tell us what the tree planting committee is doing and what you are doing.
Well, the tree planting committee, there's only 3 of us, and we are working with Tom Brady, our tree warden, and with Olivia Fisher Fox on a front yard tree planting program. And that's just, we've had this front yard program in place for, probably about 80 years. And typically we'll plant, I don't know, 5 to 10 trees a year, maybe. But Mothers Out Front has started an effort to expand that, and we're working with them. And I would guess we might do 10 trees a year, 10, maybe 20. But I mean, we're not talking. It could make a difference on a street, but it's in terms of 900 trees a year, it's not gonna make a big difference. It may be great in terms of visibility, but numerically, it's not gonna have that much impact. The thing I've been sort of pursuing on my own, a few years ago, town meeting passed a stormwater and sediment control plan. And the idea would be to the plan as it exists now just requires a developer to submit a plan of the trees he's going to remove, and so that gives some visibility as to what's happening. There's no penalty for removing trees. There's no some other towns have a tree permit process, and we do not have that process. We've had a committee looking at the issue for a while, and it's a complex issue. And if you have a tree permit process, you then have to have somebody to enforce it, which means hiring at least one more person. So that has tended to be the sticking point. I can show you, if I can share a screen, I can show you an example.
Go ahead, Hugh. Yes, you can.
Okay, 219
Yep,
Garden
go ahead.
Road. I'll just see if I can show you 219 Garden Road. Hang on. Well, okay, can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, can you see that?
It's starting to come. Yep, there it is.
Okay, that 219 Gardner is on the corner of Tappan and Gardner. And this is maybe the most glaring current example of what happens. In the center, we have a single family house, good sized house. It's about, I think, a 40,000 square foot lot, something close to an acre. And all this is all, you can see Tappan and Gardner. And so most of it has a canopy, and maybe 70 or 80% of it has a canopy. And I'll show you if I can. Anyway, if I can get to it, I will. But
Hugh, you had, it looks as if you were trying to show that kind of drone
yeah,
film sequence there.
yeah,
That's one way, but another way, Hugh, in a simpler way, just show the still photo. That might be easier for you to access.
Okay, I'd have to find. Do you have it available?
It'll take me a minute to dig it up.
Okay, so in the okay, here's the assessor's map. And what has happened now, this was done, they filed the sediment and erosion control plan. They did that, everything was done legally.
We can't
And-
see that, Hugh.
Pardon me? Say
Are
again?
we supposed to be seeing something different than the original photo?
Say again?
We're seeing just the photo that you put up initially. Are we supposed to be seeing something else?
Okay, yeah. No, okay, so I have to do sure. Okay, can you see this? Well, no, okay.
So far, we see the first slide.
Yeah, sometimes if it's a different application you're opening it in, you have to stop sharing and then reshare.
Ah. Okay, well, this is just an image. Can you see this?
It has not yet changed, Hugh.
Can you see this one? No?
Nothing is being shared now, which is a good sign, Hugh. So now go to that new image you want to share, want to show us, and then share from that. And that hopefully will pull it up. Black screen right now. We're halfway there.
Can you see it now?
Well, we see the schematic
Yes.
there.
Yeah, this is an assessor's map.
Oh, okay.
So the lot was broken into 3 pieces. It was subdivided. It was completely cleared, including the house. It's been subdivided and it's basically just an empty lot now. And as I say, this was all done completely legal. They were not asking for any permits. And so they never filed with the building department. So there was no visibility to the clear cut until it happened. And let me go up to
If you would unshare again and then put up the current slide of the bare lot, which is very moving, I thought. But unshare first and then you can pull that up. Yep, you've unshared. Now reshare on the bare lot slide.
Can you see that?
Almost, not yet. No, it's not being shared yet. But share it the same way you did the first 2.
I'm trying. Well, I have to admit, my
You
laptop,
almost got it. You had two of the 3. Just get the third and you'll be right there. It's the photos are the thing that really drive it home.
well, the laptop I'm using is 12 years old, so that might be.
Well,
Anyway.
okay. Anyway,
Anyway.
just Hugh did send me a preview of it, and on my screen it's teeny, but basically what it is, it's a shot of basically bare earth. and what you saw in that aerial, kind of thing with trees all around this very big house is now nothing but bare earth.
Right. And I also, what I did was I got the sediment control plan from the engineering department, because I wanted to understand what it really looked like. And in here, and as I say, I don't know if you can see it, but on the plan, they show all the trees they're removing. They show the reason, and they're showing the ones they're retaining. And they removed about something like 28 trees. Since the town is it's a complex process in terms of changing the zoning to add a tree permitting process. My thought is to change the stormwater sediment control plan to require that they also, on this plan, they show the canopy percentage. I mean, you can sort of guess what it is, but it would be nice to have a certified arborist or landscape architect present it on a plan which is certified. And then this will serve as a reference point for the future, because many times.
And Hugh, excuse me, let me just interrupt. I hope I'm sharing my screen, although awkwardly. Can you see, hopefully on the right side of your screen, do you see a plot of bare earth?
Yeah. That's what it looks like now.
That is what Hugh wanted to show. And if I were better at this, I could make it bigger on the screen. But the whole point is it was an entire tree planted lot, huge trees like that tree on the left of the photo. And now it is basically just denuded. And there's a lot on near the top of Summit Road that is pretty much looks the same. And this is definitely a kind of thing that we want to try to avoid.
Okay. Now,
If you want to make it bigger, John, there's 2 arrows in diagonal next to the little X just above the right corner of the picture. If you click on those 2 arrows, that should do it. To the right.
I'm not sure. I think this gets too complicated.
Okay.
We'll have to do lessons in how to screen share photos and stuff, Bob, at a later time. Maybe you can teach the course, but all I can see is everybody's faces. But you get the idea, I think. You get the idea, right? So
I just want to say something relative to this, because I actually was the person that walked by this and alerted Hugh to it. But the town needs to set a better example. And you can look in, I don't have any before pictures, but the number of mature trees that were taken down to build the new Driscoll School. It's like the town is not setting a good example in terms of preserving urban forest either. And quite frankly, preserving existing mature trees, and I think Rebecca said this, is more important than planting new ones. I mean, I'm not saying planting new ones isn't important, but if you keep losing the mature trees, and it's kind of hard to, the town needs to lead by example. That's my point.
Okay, now anyway, I don't know if you can see this image, but the sediment control plan that was filed, it was properly filed, and it showed all the trees be removed, and the idea with a couple of fairly small edits to the existing bylaw, which is 8.26, and the sediment control plan would require that the landscape architect give the canopy, give the percentage of canopy, and then if an owner goes for some kind of special permit, the planning board will have a reference and say, well, you used to have 40% canopy, and now you're presenting a plan with 30% canopy. How about adding to it? The planning board needs to be more aggressive too. They don't tend to push at all. Even when I send them pictures, they don't. I've done that, and they don't respond very robustly. So anyway, so for this coming up town meeting, I'm thinking of that as a strategy. Nancy Heller, I would suspect, might support this since she's chair of the tree protection committee, but we'll see. So that's all I have.
Yeah, okay, Hugh, so thank you very much. Basically, it's the next step. Nancy Heller, by the way, is very appreciative that we're having this meeting tonight. She had about 3 different pre-planned events, so could not attend, but she wants to know what's going on, and I'm sure she'll watch the recording. And as Hugh just said, Nancy is the chair of the tree protection committee, as opposed to Hugh's tree planting committee. So, and she's still got tons of energy and really wants to kind of work on this issue. So a sediment control plan that Hugh was talking about is one possible way to go. And another possible way to go, I'm going to just mention, is I'm going to show 2 slides. And again, I'm going to practice my screen sharing skills and we'll see if it works. Share screen. Here it is. Here it comes. Yes. Can you see a Newton ordinance?
Yep.
Okay. Basically, this is part of the city of Newton kind of tree protection response. It is a, oh darn, see, I can't, can I scroll up? Will it share if I scroll up on that screen? Anyway, it's, if you look at this, look under letter A toward the very top, it says, the terms and provisions of this article, meaning a tree protection ordinance, shall apply to any protected tree located on land within the city of Newton, not owned by the city, the Commonwealth, et cetera, or the federal government, et cetera. Meaning this is a tree ordinance that protects trees on private property. And that is the magic clause here now. That is the major thing that we have really been lacking, as I understand it, here in the town. And if you look under letter B there, no person shall remove a protected tree on a non-exempt lot located on land subject to the provisions of this article without first obtaining a tree permit or a certificate of exemption from the tree warden. Application shall be made in writing on forms specified by the tree warden. Okay. Now, there is more detail on that, but what I'm going to do, it's very similar. I'm now going to unshare and I'm going to reshare. Let me go over to Cambridge. Some information about Cambridge. So let me share this screen. Okay. Cambridge City Council passes amended tree protection ordinance in June of last year. The Cambridge City Council passed an amendment to the tree protection ordinance, changing the diameter and mitigation guidelines, yada, yada, yada. And basically, if you look at paragraph 3 there, it applies to what is officially called a significant tree. A significant tree is defined as any tree that has a diameter equal to or greater than 6 inches, mentioned at breast height, which is 4.5 feet above the ground. Okay, and there's a whole program here, mitigation payments required for all significant trees removed where insufficient quantity of replacement trees are provided, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, I think I'm going to propose that a next step for us interested in the tree issue in town would be to get more detailed information about the Newton program and the Cambridge program and see how much of that can be, can be enacted here in Brookline. And I'm very interested in finding who is interested in working with me on that. And by the way, Nancy Heller is as well. So I think with that, basically that's pretty much our speaker list. And if anybody has any questions or any comments or whatever. I see a applause thing from Hugh. Yeah, Hugh.
Yeah, okay, as in both the Newton and the Cambridge issue, the examples, they needed they had a tree permitting process. So the first step is to get something in place that will fund that, and will allow the town to hire somebody or create a position to do that. And that seems to be the sticking point. In the case of Newton, the third paragraph down, I think it was C, had a number of exemptions, and it looked to me like the general thought was, if you were a homeowner, you could remove trees. But if you were a developer, I mean, like you had to live there like 18 months before and after or something like that. So they were targeting the idea of somebody selling a property to a developer who would immediately clear cut and then sell it again. So I think there was a fairly large loophole in the Newton program, but I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. But in any event, the sticking point for Brookline is finding out how to fund somebody to do this work.
Rebecca has a yellow hand up.
Yeah. First of all, it's been great hearing everyone. I just want to mention that I think if we do create some kind of tree article, I don't even know the terminology. I'm not really a politician, but that it's important to think about the roots and also green space, because there's nothing protecting green space. So they can completely cover over green space with a building without any kind of protection. So the roots, I'll just say, like, I watched a tree on Babcock Street. You know, they had already clear cut this whole lot to build 2 houses on Babcock. And then I watched them cut one of the 2 trees they had left. And I talked to the guy and he said, the tree warden just told us we had to cut this down because of, I think he was saying that the absorption system was going to be right where the roots were. And so having some kind of protection, not just for the trees, but the root systems, I think would be important. A tree protection plan arborist told me that my trees will all be in danger of dying if they excavate, even if they're not cutting them down. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. A lot of that is controlled in the zoning bylaw. They have a landscape open space. There are requirements for different types of property where they have to have landscaped open space. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. It is a problem, but the zoning bylaw does have some control over that, depending on the type of zone it's in.
Well, Hugh, it sounds like you might be saying that the zoning bylaw is inadequate to the task at this point.
Say that again.
You say there is a zoning bylaw requiring a certain amount of open space, but it apparently is just inadequate to the task. I mean, we're finding that in instance after instance.
I don't know the particulars. I don't know the particulars of. I think you're talking about 157 Babcock.
Yes, exactly.
And that property, from what I can understand, the change to that property started about in 2013, which predates the stormwater control plan by about 5 years. So that was already in process when the zoning control plan was passed. Whether that would have made a difference, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's been in process for a long time.
Okay, Blake, and I think maybe Inga has her hand raised, but Blake first, please. Blake, be sure you unmute.
I was interested in where the 120 acres are. Is it part of the playing field, or is it a separate marshy area that doesn't involve any part of the golf business? I'm unclear on that.
Sure. About 15 acres are Putterham Woods, so that's all wooded area. The 120 acres includes also spaces like the clubhouse, the parking lot, but the majority of that space is consumed by fairways, tees, putting greens.
So if this becomes a plan for planting trees, it would take away from some of the golf course Is that correct?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I think it comes down to priorities and where we want to go as a town.
Well, I
The
think
city of Cambridge is currently considering what they want to do with their Fresh Pond golf course. And talking to some of my golf friends, there's a lot of different choices for golf courses to play at in the Boston area. So within 30 miles of the Brookline Municipal Golf Course, there's about 30 golf courses open to the public.
it seems to me that from your figures, that this is a very small group that uses the golf course. And every time I drive by it, I'm very puzzled at how few people you see out walking on the green. I mean, there are some, but very relatively few. So it seems to me that the town ought to face the idea of priorities of land usage about the Butterham Golf Course.
Yeah, your interpretation is consistent with what I believe. And that's partially just the nature of the sport. You don't want to be too close to flying white golf balls. So I think the golf course is pretty much at close to full capacity in terms of the number of people who could play there. I mean, maybe you could add some number, but it's not going to double with optimization.
Well, my opinion would be that
Hugh, I'm sorry, Blake, go ahead. Blake, go
I
ahead.
would just
I didn't
say
mean to interrupt.
the town ought to, we as a town ought to take a look at the comparative usage and public involvement with the land involved.
I agree.
Hugh, you had a raised hand a second ago? Or Hugh, are you applauding what the other folks are saying?
Here I am. Yeah, the golf course, they're undergoing a redesign. And one of the points they made, I think they have, I think it's like one group every 15 minutes can use it now, and they want to make it more efficient so that it's one group every 12 minutes. So that's one of the factors that also they're talking about adding walking trails and some other amenities that will appeal to a larger population.
Yeah, I can add on to that. So I walked the course this morning with a few friends. So on Monday mornings, it's closed to golfers and anybody can walk there. And it's a beautiful space. Like if you have the chance to get there, I recommend going.
Yeah. Our hope on one of the thoughts I've had on the Brookline Green Space Alliance is maybe to arrange some kind of a walking tour of a potential pedestrian path or some kind of walking path, and maybe even using golf carts for anybody who doesn't want to walk a couple of miles. And we might do that on a Monday morning. But I haven't talked to anybody about that. So that's just an idea.
One other question about Butterham is economically, does it pay for its self? I mean, I'm sure they have a tax exemption, so
no, they have.
I'm sure that the amount of golfers that go along there don't cover the costs.
No, they do cover costs.
Yeah, so I had another slide to cover that topic. Just recently, they're starting to make a fair amount of money. So last year they made about $500,000. That's in part due to the new driving range that was added. That's the moneymaker for the area.
And that money goes to the town? Does that money go to the town?
No, so the golf course is run as an enterprise fund. So the town doesn't put money into that fund. And conversely, we don't get any money from the golf course when they do make money. So
if they make more money than it costs, what happens to that money?
Well,
they have a reserve fund that's currently at about $1 million. So it sits in the bank, or they use it to improve the course, or any number of things. But so if I look at other courses like the municipal golf course in Lexington, Pine Meadows, they have a 9-hole golf course. And over the last 10 years, they've been making much more money than we have. Over 10 years, they made well over $2 million. And they run it as an enterprise fund as well. But I'm curious as to why they're able to make so much more money on a 9-hole golf course as opposed to 18.
Bob Miller, you have a yellow hand.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up question to someone else's, Lynn. Is it possible that your proposal of, the 120 acres or whatever could be used for other purposes and still maintain a golf course, or is it one or the other?
I think we could come up with any number of different permutations. But I think if we wanted to use it for, say, playing fields for part of the space, or putting together some additional forests, I think it would eat into some of the number of holes. So
Well,
I think
okay,
it's a matter
thanks.
matter of defining priorities and what the people of Brookline want.
And the other question,
Rebecca, yellow hand. Blake, put up your yellow hand when you want to speak. Rebecca, yellow hand, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I put it in the chat as well, that on the Outer Cape, there's a golf course that incorporates wild and wooded areas into the golf course. So I'm just thinking, I love the idea of having a nature sanctuary or something like that instead of a golf course, but if there's resistance to that sort of thing, I'm just thinking that it might be cool to research some of these kind of in between golf courses where it could be part nature sanctuary, part golf course.
Well,
I'll tell you, just so we're fair to everybody, I hope everyone knows, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, is there a line that says reactions? And then from there, go to raise hand. And that way we'll call on people in fair order for everybody. And the next yellow hand at this point is Alyssa. And then after that, Blake, we'll go to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks.
Alyssa P,
Yep.
please. Yeah. Hi, Alyssa. How's it going?
Thanks, John. I'm well, thank you. And Olivia, nice to see you. Haven't seen you in like a gazillion years, it feels like. So, in addition to the sort of lost opportunity for to, have this land that's currently being used as a golf course to help position us better for climate change, I think it would probably be important to talk about. It's my understanding that golf courses make a significant environmental toll, not only through water consumption, but in the fertilization that then creates runoff. And I'm sure that they're probably using some kind of, weed control, which is poisoning the land. So in general, I think, people look at golf courses and they see all this green grass and they think, oh, isn't that lovely? But they're sort of toxic. So, if this idea is being pursued to, sort of add that into the discussion.
Yeah, I think those are good questions to ask. Most of my research so far has been focused on the history of the golf course and where we are at currently. And just with some back of the envelope calculations, I think they're using about, in 2021, 8 million gallons of water. I put a link for my math in the chat there.
Right.
But I'm going to ask some of my friends who are water experts. David Lascoye I know he did some work with water rates, so he'll be able to check that and make sure I'm doing it right. But I wouldn't be surprised if it is a very high number. And then as far as pesticide use, I don't know. I haven't. I'd be surprised if that's documented somewhere that's readily accessible to the public, but it couldn't hurt to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anita, yellow hand. You're muted, Anita. Anita, unmute yourself.
Len, you may. I'm unmuted, I hope. Len, you may
You
have
are
answered
now,
this
yeah, thank you.
before, but what's the what's the percentage of golfers using that course who are Brookline residents as opposed to non-Brookline residents?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways you could try and discern that number. So I learned from the golf manager, Justin Lawson, that last year about 8.2% of the golf rounds were played by Brookline residents. So that could sort of set an upper bound for the number of residents who play that year. Granted, some of the residents may have played more than one round of golf, and they don't track anything deeper than that.
Yeah, and I attended a meeting where this was discussed, and the golf manager, who I believe you just named, Len, was touting the fact that apparently non-residents have a higher, ticket price to play golf there. And Len was, I'm sorry, the manager was touting the fact that because it is such a high percentage of non-residents, they're paying more money into this enterprise fund. And he was implying that was a good thing for Brookline. Now, interestingly enough, at this particular meeting, it did not, we were all led to kind of, it was implied that that any profit from the golf course would be for the benefit of the town. But I'm very interested to hear, Len, that you say that in fact, that's not the case, that it goes into a reserve fund, I guess, for the course itself. So this is something to be looked into.
Yeah, it all stays within the enterprise fund. And like Hugh mentioned, some of the work that the master plan is focusing on is improving the walking trails within Putterham Woods. You used to be able to walk there, but it's currently closed. So that 15 acres of space, I'm hoping they'll prioritize that so that non-golfers can use that space. But we're talking 15 acres, and then they'll link it to Dane Park, which I think is around another 15 acres. So, I mean, it's not officially part of the 120 acres, Dane Park, but I think there will be some nice amenities for the non-golfer. But in my opinion, it's fairly minuscule in comparison to the 120 acres as a whole. And just go for a walk there, and it's amazing how big that space is, and it's beautiful, and could be even more beautiful in my opinion.
Yellow hand, Mayim, please.
Oh, Len, I wonder if you could give us an idea of what would actually be the legal procedures we'd have to go through to make these changes? Seems like it's going to be a long road.
Yeah. So at the last town meeting, Melissa Goff, the assistant town administrator, said that if we wanted to change it from an enterprise fund to something else, then it would require a vote from town meeting. But I think town meeting can also pass resolutions on any number of things that we find interesting. I think we could say we want the course to be something different, or we could ask for a task force to study how many holes the golf course should be, and what we want that land to be used as.
The next yellow hand is myself. And so Len, I would just like it just, I know that what will happen, and this is the whole Brookline by design idea, which is that as part of a planning process for everything in town, all development in town, that all interests are, are included in the process. And so the housing people, the people wanting more dense housing in Brookline, affordable and otherwise, I'm sure would, have ideas for this land as well. And I just wonder if, as you've handed out your postcards with the question, I wonder if you've gotten any interest from housing people, or actually anybody else who has some other interests in using this land.
Yeah, I haven't closely parsed the results of that survey. It's still ongoing, but certainly there are people who would like to see some housing put in there or some other sort of development. I think that's unlikely to happen because the land is protected by Article 97. And in order to change the original purpose of that land, which was playgrounds, it would require a 2/3 vote from both houses of the state legislature, vote from the select board, town meeting, and those are high hurdles to get over. Also, it's not great land for development. It's a former wetland. It's frequently flooded. So there are a lot of constraints that I think would prevent any sort of housing. It's not to say that it couldn't be done, but I think it would be difficult.
Any other
And
questions?
it's a bad
concerns?
location. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a bad location for housing because there isn't public transportation down there, right?
Yeah, the D line, the Chestnut Hills stop from Dane Park is a little less than a mile away. So if we could put in some nice bike paths, like, I mean, it would be perfect. But right now, I think the town does have some plans to improve Hammond Street and add some traffic calming. But right now, when I'm riding there, I'm riding on the sidewalk for most of the time, and otherwise, you're fighting with the cars that are going fast. And then,
Lynn, were you saying that it would require a vote of the State House to change the use or just for housing?
for housing, I think to do more development along the lines of commercial or housing, then it would require the vote from the State House. But my interpretation is that if it were used for playing fields or paths or forests, that would be within the scope of what's allowed currently.
Interesting way to look at it. Yeah. Okay. Blake.
I'm shocked to hear your data about resident versus non-resident use. That means it's really, we're providing this for non-Brookline residents by and large. I think that's interesting to me. It increases the rationale for doing something else with it. The other thing I wondered is how much control does the town of Brookline have on the land? Do they own the land? Do they, what's the arrangement for between the club and Brookline? And if the club's such a moneymaker, maybe that's something the town could use.
So the town acquired the land in the early 1900s, and it's Brookline's decision what to do with it. As far as like the numbers in terms of who's using the golf course, residents versus not, I think we certainly want to be a welcoming town. Like if people want to visit Brookline, I think that's a great thing. But then looking at the numbers of the Arnold Arboretum, they're getting millions of visitors, and we'll never be Arnold Arboretum 2. But maybe we could do something approaching what they have, which I think may improve diversity of use even more so.
Any other questions, comments, ideas, building off of any of our speakers? It is now 6:21. And we usually break about 6:30 or so. I can tell you I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about all of these ideas. My personal inclination is mostly to work on the tree protection ordinance idea. And I'm going to propose that, Olivia, that we at CAB could work with the Mothers Out Front, tree group, for kind of follow-up meetings on that. And for one thing, we could arrange a meeting with Nancy Heller. As I said, she really wanted to attend tonight, but just was too busy. But she's got all kinds of interest in this and she knows stuff about this because she's been working on it for quite a while. So she can help us move forward on all of that. And in terms of the timing on that particular a tree protection ordinance, that would be something that would be enacted through a town meeting warrant article. For the November town meeting, the warrant will close probably very early September or so, which means we could do the prep work on that through the summer. And then begin kind of the formal meetings with all the town committees on that if we chose to do an article through the fall leading up to town meeting in November. So So our timing is pretty good for folks who want to work on that aspect of it. So, and I'm hearing from folks in the chat. If any of these projects you're interested in working on, express your interest in the chat, okay? Just so we can all keep track of all of this and get in touch with you and keep all these ideas moving forward. So, any other questions, comments? Rebecca, I do remember that you said you would open up your backyard to tours at some point, maybe when you return to town. I'll tell you what, I'm interested in holding you to that. And so we'll be in touch, okay? Rebecca, you and I, so we can kind of arrange that kind of thing.
Sounds great. I'd love to make it a little mini nature sanctuary.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect. So, and also just the little funny part of this is all of us who are having trouble in sharing our screens and showing slides and stuff, we could have a little class in that, how to do that. I think a lot of us could use that. So, okay. All right. Any other final questions, comments, concerns, whatever? Let me just say one thing about a different issue that should be of concern to all environmentalists in town, which is that there in the town of Brookline, there are 8 historic preservation districts, and a number of Brookline residents who have tried to do kind of eco improvements to their town have found that some of their ideas have not been kind of accepted very generously, and very, obstacles laid up, extra expenses imposed, etc. The Preservation Commission is aware of these problems and has just reopened. Its last guidelines were formalized in, I forget, it was something like 2016, 2018, around that time. In terms of eco technologies, that's kind of like dinosaur years ago. And they know that. And so they're opening up their design guidelines for consideration for new eco ideas to incorporate new eco technologies such as air source heat pumps, et cetera, solar on roofs, perhaps. I don't know how far they're going to be willing to go. There could be other considerations apart from environmental ones that they'd be willing to consider. And they are beginning to meet on that as we speak. And their first meeting on that is on the 18th of this month. I forget what day that is. That is, you know what? I think it's probably, sorry.
It's Monday.
It's
next Monday.
Is that the meeting? And it's at 8:15 in the morning, as I recall. It's on the town calendar. Do I have the date right, Alyssa? Is it in fact the 18th?
That I've got to double check.
It is. I apologize. It's Tuesday, July 19th at 8:15 a.m.
Okay.
It's an official town meeting by Zoom. And as I say, it is the Preservation Commission, which is the group that decides. I believe they have a huge discretion in deciding their own standards. And they're going to revise their design guidelines for all parts of town that are parts of historic preservation districts. So that's something of great concern. So, so I'll tell you what, I will be in touch with Olivia and on the assumption that the MOF tree committee wants to keep working on some of these issues as well. And so we'll arrange follow-ups on how to pursue some of these tree issues. And are there any other questions, comments, concerns, final questions, comments, concerns for tonight's meeting? All right. All right, hearing none, let's kind of formally adjourn this meeting. I'm going to keep it open for a few minutes so I can kind of read all the chat, but why don't we consider this meeting adjourned for this evening? And thank you to all of our speakers and to everybody.